Hello, and welcome to another session of the Talks by Hybrid. This is Dimitri Stefani, your host. Today we have a very special guest from the local scene, one of the most respected people in the industry. Today I have with me Yangos Hadjigiannis. He studied at the University of Nottingham, where he got his LLB with first class honors. Then he moved on to the University of Cambridge to do his postgraduate diploma in management studies and also LLM in international law. And he's been the Deputy Director General and now CEO of the Cyprus Institute of Marketing. He's a member in a lot of boards into the industry, from the Cyprus Investment of the Cyprus Investment Promotion Agency. He's a chairman of the promotion committee, and also he's a member of the Cyprus Advertising Control Agency and the HR and Training Committee of the Cyprus Investment Funds Association, while also the member of the board of directors of the Cyprus Employers and Industrialists Federation. He's also an advisor for a lot of companies and organizations in Cyprus, where he issues on strategy and management. Yangos, welcome to the podcast, and thank you very, very much for your precious time.
Thank you, Dimitris, for the introduction. And I'm delighted to be with you and have this conversation today. I hope we raise interesting issues for our viewers and shed some light on aspects of marketing and business in general.
Before we began our podcast, we had a small talk about the underrated role of marketeers nowadays, and also how people tend to confuse the job description of marketing and how it also blended within HR and marketing, or HR and other disciplines of the business. My question is, how did you combine law with marketing?
I mean, if you see the real definition of marketing as a science, so marketing can be combined with anything. And obviously, yes, there is an understatement, but also a big confusion, both between professionals, but among the audience as well, in general, customers and consumers, when it comes to the role of marketing for any business. The businesses that have been very successful, especially large companies overseas, have integrated marketing into the operations of the company throughout, irrespective of the different departments. Whereas marketing to be seen as only sales or promotion, it's a recipe for disaster. It's going against the real philosophy of the market, because the role of marketing, as institutions like us would like to advise, is the bridge between the customer, the consumer, and the company. So if you don't build this bridge, if you don't have constant communication, which this communication is two ways, from the customer to the company and from the company to the customer, then you fail, and you might develop products or services which are irrelevant. So you need to have this constant bridge, this constant flow of communication between the company and the consumers and the market. In many occasions, you have to be ahead of the market to design products and services that the consumers don't even know when you produce them that they need. And we have many examples of these. For example, Apple, when they developed iPod, nobody saw the benefit of it. And then a few years down the line, it just became a must to have iPod or something similar. The same goes with iPad. I remember the launching of the iPad, but everybody said, okay, it's another phone, just bigger. But it wasn't. It's not another PC. It's not another phone. So there are many, many examples like this. What we are trying to do as an institution is to develop marketing as a science. And this is what we've been trying since 1978. If we are talking now in 2022, that still marketing is understated. Can you imagine the state of marketing in Cyprus in 1978? So we came a long way, and we helped to grow the economy by educating marketeers and managers. But that still there is this misunderstanding, misconception of what marketing is and what it should be.
Where do you think this problem arises from?
It's several factors. First of all, people have associated marketing with sales. So they think that if you have the social skills and if you are a good salesperson, then you can be a good marketeer. So they don't understand the definition. Perhaps it's also our fault as marketers that we didn't explain it very well. The second thing, it's a matter of the companies. The companies, especially small companies, they don't want experts and they cannot afford to have a marketing team. So they share duties between different departments, whether it's marketing and sales or marketing and HR. And the third is perhaps lobbying, because, for example, to become a lawyer or to become an accountant, you need to, it's a regulated profession. So you have to go through some exams. Not everyone can become a lawyer or an accountant, whereas a marketer, unfortunately, despite professional bodies in marketing and despite several degrees and masters, anyone can join a marketing team, irrespective of whether they have marketing qualifications or they don't. So it's various factors that have led this, this situation that we face today. We're not saying that marketing has not developed, and it has developed a lot in the last 20, 30 years, but there is still a way to go in order for people to understand that marketing is a science like every other science, whether it's mathematics, whether it's physics, whether it's law. Marketing is a science if you see the depth and breadth of this profession.
Mm-hmm. To me, it looks like in the beginning, for someone who doesn't have a clear perception about marketing, there is a lot of fluffiness in the thing, if I might say. But if you take the whole process of the marketing procedure of building a clear plan, there is the diagnosis part, there is a strategizing part, and there is a tactical part. Where if you do it right, and if you do your research right, identify the right segments, do a clear positioning statement based on your company, your competitors, and the insights of your personas, then you have clear, measurable results that you can quantify into your objectives. But still, we see that the industry and the practitioners suffer from an urge to tactification and communication and digitization and whatever comes to mind when you see new practices and new tech jargon and marketing limbo that is driving people towards something more trendy to work around. So how does the institution manage to remain relevant to the changing times, but at the same time preach the science of marketing?
Obviously, as I said before, we started that in 1978 when marketing wasn't even developed in other advanced countries. What can you say about Cyprus? But I remember when, there is the history that we've been sending out letters to companies saying that, we offer marketing courses. And, they ignored us. They said marketing is not relevant for us. Even the big organizations like banks, they wanted auditors, they wanted accountants. That was, what companies needed at the time. And back in the 80s, there was not even a single company that had a marketing department. Not even the large companies had marketing departments. So we developed the skills through educating, offering both short and academic courses. We educated many individuals, more than 10,000 individuals over the last 44 years. So gradually, when more educated, more trained, more skillful, people were going into the companies, developing marketing plans, developing marketing strategies, showing the companies what the importance of marketing is, and obviously also with the increased competition globally, because it was a different game in the 80s. You didn't have to compete globally. The imports were very small, and then globalization made it possible for all Cypriot companies to compete globally with e-commerce, but also they faced fierce competition from companies abroad. So in order to survive, they had to understand marketing better. They had to, develop global marketing strategies in order to understand and be able to stay ahead of change. And this has not been, easy, and that's why many companies fail. So today we've developed, the economy in a much better way. Marketing has a place in the decision making, but of course, as I said before, we're not at the stage of other regulated professions. What we are doing as CIM is continuously adapting our programs to stay relevant. Obviously, we are a fully fledged business school, so we don't offer only marketing. Marketing is our roots, our DNA, but we offer many other courses in other fields as well, like accounting, finance, shipping. But what we explain our students, no matter if they're studying accounting or finance or shipping, we from day one, we incorporate and we make it very clear what marketing is. So if you are a doctor and you don't understand marketing, you're going to suffer. You need to keep your customers happy, whether they are patients or customers at a retail shop. You need to be different. And we see that, I mean, in the way doctors or psychologists use social media today to promote themselves, to talk about, their specialization. So marketing cuts across all professions. It's not only for the few, it's for every person who has customers. And I think, if you're doing business, whether it's profitable or non-profit, because that's another big area of marketing, how non-profit organizations, charity organizations attract money, how do they keep relations with stakeholders, with sponsors. So over the years, from being very narrow, marketing has developed into a fully fledged science covering a lot of aspects. And, we teach our students consumer behavior. Consumer behavior has to do with psychology, psychology of the market, the psychology of the customer. We talk about data analytics, that's IT. So a lot of other areas, a lot of other sciences are integrated into a marketing professional. So if you don't understand numbers, if you don't understand the basics of IT, if you don't understand the psychology of the customer and the consumer, then you're going to fail. So in order to be able to understand at least the basics, so you're not going to be an expert in every field, but to understand the basics and be able to lead a team of different professionals, digital marketers, promotion agencies, psychologists, that you all, will need to work together, then it's a real task.
You mentioned a really interesting buzzword that I used to use on my own job titles. You said digital marketers. I wanted to ask you, as an institution and as do you feel there should be a diversification between digital marketing and marketing in 2022?
I mean, okay, if you understand the basics of where things go today, then you can simply say that everything is digital. To separate the two doesn't make much sense. You have to think in different ways. Digital marketing doesn't come from a different planet. The basics of marketing are there. So if we look at the 4Ps or 7Ps or 10Ps, because these theories have developed. So whether you are doing marketing online or whether you're doing the traditional offline mode, then the basics are still the same. You need to communicate, you need to show your competitive advantage. But obviously, living in a digitalized world where consumers talk between themselves on platforms, social media, many people never see a traditional store. They do all their shopping online, they do their research online. Obviously, if you're not digital, if you don't understand digital marketing, there's no chance of survival. And it gives you immense opportunities because the internet, apart from being a huge resource, it's one of the cheapest resources available on the planet. So this is the magic of internet. That's why it's been so successful. It's not about just having the tools at your disposal to be able to sell, buy, analyze the customer, but it's also a much cheaper media compared to television, for example, or outdoor media. So what created this revolution is the value. So you see what you get and the cost you get it. So this combination has revolutionized, because there are many tools that only big companies can afford. Those will never be a revolution. These will be important tools for the few, for the wealthy. But when it comes to access online to the internet or social media, the model is not to charge. The model is to bring the crowds free of charge. I mean, look at WhatsApp, look at Viber. They don't charge anyone. Why are they doing this? Are they a charitable organization? Obviously
not.
not. It's the power of information. It's the power of data analytics. It's the power to control people's mind in a way. So the fact that all these platforms, or the majority of them, are free, accessible to everyone, and okay, there are places on the planet that they don't have good internet, but in general, with a mobile device, you can do many things that you couldn't do with very expensive PCs a couple of years ago. So the fact that everything is value for money, let's say, online when it comes to access, and you don't have to wait, you don't have to ask anyone. I mean, you don't have to ask to go to a library and ask for someone to borrow a book like we did, and this happened very quickly. From the age that we used to photocopy books, 10 years down the line, not 100 years down the line, to go and photocopy a book seems like a different planet. So it's amazing, and it's okay. It can be scary in a way. The fact that today we have so much information in our hands in a small mobile device. What is going to happen in 10 or 15 years? So the fact that today we have this digital revolution, can be also scary, because how would the organization stay relevant in 10 or 15 years? What's next? We know AI, for example. How much would the machines take over? And what would be the role of marketer? Would it be just configuring the machines? Would it be just maintaining the machines? Or it would be a 50-50 game?
Then we become technicians.
You see, so there is so much that on the one hand excites us, but on the other hand scares us, because the pace of technological development, it's unbelievable. Every year, you get a new mobile phone, and there is 10 miles ahead in terms of how the screen looks, or the cameras. I remember the first phones 7 or 8 years ago with cameras, and now the minimum is 3 to 4 cameras on a phone. I mean, not 1, not 2, 3 and 4. So you can get different angles, and you can get video and zoom in and zoom out. I mean, these things, it's just unbelievable. But for the youngsters, for the 5 or 10-year-olds, it's their second nature. So they think everything is touchscreen, everything is on a mobile device. This is what they know. What would their kids have to do with? I mean, in 10 or 15 years, how would it be? Probably from year one, they'll be wearing a watch and doing most of the things on a watch from year one. A smartwatch. So I mean, there is a lot. There is so much. We're talking about smart cars. We're talking about autonomous driving. It's watching the movies and living the movies. It's what we've seen 20 years ago, and we're living it today. And the pandemic, of course, has paced up all these developments. So we broke the psychological barrier of working remotely, of Zoom meetings, of doing what we do to now, a podcast. We before the pandemic, it would have been very weird to be talking remotely, and probably we would feel safer to be in a room and be recorded. So 2 years, things have changed a lot, and it's here to stay. So it's, as I said, marketers have a lot of work to do, and their role will be changing. I believe that they will still have a role, but they will need to understand more about technology. They need to understand that the customers have so much information on their hands, so they have to be clever in the way they communicate. But at the same time, the customers are not fooled. You cannot cheat them. You cannot sell, overpromise. You have to be honest. You have to be obviously selling some product that is differentiated and maintain your competitive advantage. But having said all that, I mean, closing this part of the discussion is that the basics still matter.
Yeah, it's very important, because we were talking about the science that it's almost, let's say, 100 years old, and we see a lot of developments and new technological advances taking place into the industry. And I wanted to see from your end, as an institution, where do you see that the local market is lacking or needs more support in terms of marketing education? Because the role of the marketeer has always been and will always be to interpret the needs of the consumer, of the customer within the organization by breaking down silos and being able to transfer knowledge across the organization to increase the value and the equity of the brand. So how do you see the needs of the marketeer in the local market evolving? And do we have the understanding and the perception that we need to break down from the trends and focus onto the basics?
I think in some respects, yes. I mean, the local, marketeers, let's say, have developed. We see more educated, more trained people taking over. So, the new generation comes well equipped. Obviously, it's hugely important to stay relevant by continuous education. It's not enough to do a degree or a master's. That's the beginning, is not the end. You have to do a lot of short courses. You have to see what's happening outside the world. So, Cyprus is always 8 to 10 years behind, for example, what's happening in the US. So a trend you will see today in the US probably will take about 8 years or 10 to happen in Cyprus. So you have to keep your eyes open, your ears open when it comes to trends, be continuously updated with the latest theories, the latest developments, in order to be able to preempt some changes, not to run after developments here in Cyprus. And networking is very important. What we're trying to do as CIM is to organize conferences, to organize events, to network, to exchange ideas between marketers, but other professionals as well, to provide short courses for companies in order to train their staff and to, again, new theories come up, contemporary theories come up. Yes, the basics are important, but the basics need to be adapted to the new realities. So if, for example, in the past, it was all about having a store in the high street or paying a lot of money to be visible by getting, the best store at the best place. Yes, it could be important for some companies to be visible, but for many other companies, being invisible doesn't mean anything. They can be very successful without ever knowing where they're located, whether they are located in a fancy building, whether they're located in a small office. Nobody cares. What the customers care is the end game, the end result. They get the product on time, they're happy, they have service. What we hugely like inside is after sale service and the care. And I've been saying this for more than 15 years, and it hasn't developed. And I say the example that you go to a store to buy a TV, a very simple example. And I'm asking how many customers have received a call a week later after they bought a TV or a drying machine or a washing machine, whatever, white goods. And I'm telling you that 0% of customers have received a call to say, yes, we don't want anything. We just wanted to see that you are happy with your TV, to let us know if you have any complaints. And this very, very simple practice of calling up, and okay, some companies might send automated emails, but it doesn't work. When it comes to personalized, especially in a small place like Cyprus, to receive a call from Yannis or George or Maria and say, this is who I am. I'm calling just to check up on your recent purchase to see if you are happy. And it never happens. And imagine the loyalty building, the cross-selling opportunities, because then you build the relationship and then you will call them up and say, we've got an offer for whatever we have. And you build a customer retention strategy, a customer loyalty scheme, which doesn't cost much. It's a matter of implementing it. We're not talking about visiting everyone's house. It's about phone calls, a system in place to keep track of recent purchases and make the most of them. And this is what we're lacking, some basic elements of marketing. We might be doing very expensive advertising. We might be doing amazing work on social media, but why don't we call our customers to see if they are happy? And simple things like this can make a huge difference, because we talked a lot about digitalization. We talk a lot about automated mails, automated messages, social media, but still people like the personal attention, and still they would like a phone call. I'm not, of course, saying that you give them a call every day. That would be annoying, but to give them a call after the purchase, so you don't interfere in the way that you're trying to sell again, but just to show some care and some human element. This is one of the things that companies really miss in Cyprus.
And I think it also works best for research purposes as well, to get constructive feedback on your brand and on your service, because if you really want to get a clear understanding of a lion, you don't go to the zoo, you go to the jungle if you want to understand the nature of the lion. So it's to me, it's the same thing, having a first-hand approach to your customers' feedback and how they feel about the product, and if they would recommend it, also gives you enough insight and knowledge on how to adapt and formulate your offering. Another subject I want to touch upon was the recent unprecedented changes we had in the global economy, firstly from the pandemic, then from the war outbreak between Russia and Ukraine. Because I know your contribution and interest in the academia also involves the economics and financial affairs. So I would like your take on the matter. Firstly, the global disruption of the pandemic, followed by the war, and how this affects the marketing industry and in general the economy.
Obviously, if we look at the pandemic, it has a huge impact on everything. We talked briefly before that it has paced up, it has made digital transformation, and digital transformation obviously has a lot to do with marketing as well, and the relationship between the company and the customers and the way customers behave. So it has had a huge impact, and we know that the pandemic overall had a negative impact on the economy, but at the same time, many sectors of the economy benefited. For example, whether it's delivery, food delivery, whether it's social media, more was spent on social media to advertise because exactly people were spending more time at home, whether it's Netflix, so a lot of the things that people do on their own from their home have boosted during the pandemic. So on the one hand, everybody was doing cooking at home, watching YouTube channels on cooking. So people had to adapt to a new reality, and a lot of these elements will stay. Some of the things will maybe go back to normal, but it will be a new normality, and will be a new day. Obviously, the companies had to adapt. It was a violent adaptation. It wasn't a smooth adaptation. They had to violently move their staff remotely. They had to, service their customers remotely. They had to give options to the customers. For example, the car industry, you couldn't go to the showroom, so you had to have platforms where the customers would go and design and choose the color of their car, and these things will stay. In a way, this was a good element because it forced companies. Before, they were discussing, and never taking a decision. Now it wasn't about discussion; it was survival mode. So they had to do it.
So it accelerated the whole process.
Exactly. A lot of the projects that were on hold or under discussion had to be implemented. At the same time, remote working has changed a lot. The work environment, the location that you have the digital nomads, they travel all around the world. It means that why should I get someone from Cyprus to be my design studio if I'm not very happy? I can get someone in Norway and they offer the same service. And anyway, I don't see the Cypriot people, I don't see the Norwegian people. I just get the result. It doesn't mean that this applies to all professions, but it has revolutionized the way we see things. It has opened our mind, it has created a new perspective on many different things. And now, after 2 years, it has been embedded into our philosophy. So 2 years is a long time. So we have adapted to this new normality. Now, when it comes to the war, it's a completely different game. Now we're talking about a violent situation between two countries. We're not politicians to discuss why and who is right or wrong. It's more about the global economy that would definitely be affected. And perhaps this will have the opposite effect. This will stall a lot of projects. So the pandemic has paced up change. I think this will slow down change because people are scared. People don't know tomorrow. There's talk about European extended war. There is talk about the fact that costs have increased immensely, inflation. So companies, I would say, they are more conservative after this. So some projects, some big plans that they wanted to implement after the pandemic, now they have to wait. And I would do the same. I mean, it's not the time now to take huge risks. It's a matter of kind of wait and see, stabilize, consolidate, because we're just coming out of the pandemic. Things were looking brighter, and now they're not looking very bright. And marketing, as all other professions, will suffer. Now the question is how long will it be? And it doesn't. I mean, even if the war finishes in a couple of weeks, the sanctions, this Cold War climate between Russia and the Western countries will remain for a long time. So we all have to be cautious. Yes, business has to go on, but can you imagine? I mean, who would have thought a month ago that McDonald's and Zara and IKEA would be moving out of Russia and Facebook wouldn't be working in Russia, such a big country? And especially for Cyprus, we're talking about a very, very important partner, business partner. The same goes with Ukraine. When will Ukraine be reconstructed again? How much money would you need to put into Ukraine to reconstruct that country that has suffered so much? And what do you do with the millions of refugees? Where do they go? So there's so much uncertainty that obviously I think it will have the opposite effect of the pandemic in terms of the pace of change, because there'll be less money available. And during the pandemic, all the countries pumped into the economy money. Now it's going to be the opposite. Countries are pumping money into defense. They're spending a lot of money in defense. So instead of things to develop the economy, spending money on arms and weapons, it creates the opposite effect. It stops development of the economy. And private projects, I mean, not to be able to move money between countries easily, to see, for example, yachts and jets being seized without any court order. It's so complicated. And unfortunately, it's crisis after crisis.
It's very challenging times. And I was thinking if there is any space for marketing in this situation, even to create a positive impact. I mean, we've seen some brands taking their piece of responsibility by removing their activities into Russia, but we also seen some other brands like Airbnb who decided to put flats and rooms available in Ukraine for people to fundraise and create a positive impact through a global fundraising. Do you think these acts at the end of the day have significant impact into the economy, or are they just a marketing gimmick to further increase the equity of a brand and their presence into situations like this?
I think it's kind of a one-way road, because if one company does it, then the others have to follow. So if one store closes down, a big store, then the others have to follow. It's someone starts this, someone genuinely says, okay, it's kind of showing Russia that we don't agree, and everybody disagrees, obviously, with the war. Nobody wants wars to happen, and then it becomes kind of a marketing gimmick as well, because you have to support Ukraine because it's today's trend. So it's not like it was a conscious decision by all companies. By some companies it was. By other companies it was just following the trend. And consumers will not be happy if you don't follow what is considered righteous. So in a way, it's understandable. You see all the companies say temporarily closed. So obviously they want to go back. Now, who's going to be the first to go back? That's another question. If the war ends in a couple of weeks, who is the bold one to say, okay, I'm opening my stores again? Because we're not talking about, and maybe someone says, okay, what about the employees of those stores, the Russian people? They're not to blame. It's their government that messed it up. It's not the people that work in the store that probably they don't support them.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't vote for the war.
It's an ethical dilemma, and I'm very curious to see who is going to be, the big brand that goes back first. Because at some point they will go back, but who is going to be the first one? This is a good question.
Yeah, a very interesting one, and a reason to believe that marketing might be the enabler that is going to unite the economy again and bring opportunities to the forefront.
Yeah, marketing can be part, but this is a very, very complex issue. It's geopolitical, it's a financial war, and this financial war will not end soon. So unfortunately, okay, we have to go on with business. There's not the option to just sit and wait. You have to keep moving, you have to keep working, and you have to try to be as positive as possible. But yes, it's a major issue, and some analysts say that the financial impact for the Cyprus economy will be bigger than the pandemic. So I am kind of agreeing with this statement. Okay, we don't want to make nobody can make safe assumptions or safe forecasts, because things change daily.
Of course.
But I'm more inclined to this notion that for Cyprus, the war in Ukraine will have a bigger impact rather than the pandemic.
Yangos, our current audience, people subscribe to our newsletter and podcast are broken down into two segments. We have the CEOs who are visionaries and want to see what's coming up in marketing, and they want to remain informed and educated. And we have the young aspiring marketeers who want to get into the industry and find out how it's working. So closing this beautiful podcast, I would like to ask you, what's your tip of advice, first of all, to the CEOs and then to the young aspiring marketeers for 2022?
I mean, obviously, for the CEOs, being a CEO myself, it's all about being cautious, but at the same time alert all the time. Things change in such a fast pace. I personally cannot plan too much ahead. You can, as things stand today, pandemic, war. You try to plan for the next few months, but you have to be vigilant. You have to be flexible. I would say that the magic word nowadays is flexibility, resilience. Obviously, the strongest one will survive. Not everyone will survive a crisis. So it's a matter about inspiring people to be positive. At the same time, explaining the difficulties. We're not living in a dream world. We're living in a very difficult world. So it's a matter of, leading your people with a positive attitude, but being very flexible and on top of things. This is the time that CEOs need to show their strength and commitment to the company. This is the time that they need to lead the organization during crisis. The easy times are, you don't have to be at the office every day. You can do other things, but during these difficult times, you have to be visible. Your people need to see, a smile on your face. They need to see that you are in control of things. It doesn't mean that you always are. You have to have your own, control mechanisms in terms of supporting your people, because they go from a crisis to crisis, and their leader is their example. You have to set the right example. And when it comes to the youngsters, I fully appreciate that it's kind of a lost generation in many respects, because it's been the collapse of the banking sector in 2013. We have 2020, the pandemic, and this is the war. It's been 10 years of continuous turbulence. And I appreciate that, sometimes their dissatisfaction, dismay of, crisis after crisis. But again, I believe that the ones who are resilient, the ones who are agile, will have a much brighter future, because if you survive and thrive through these 10 years, it means you can do everything. So it's kind of a lesson for them to see that the crises are not something nowadays that comes every 20 years. It's going to be constant. So you have to strive through this crisis. You have to keep some elements and, keep moving, keep working if you are going to be successful. And you have to look ahead and not backwards. If whatever happened does happen, whatever happened with the pandemic will not at the end, but towards the end. And then this war, we're in the middle of this war. We don't know how long it will last. Obviously, we hope and we pray that things will come down soon. And then we have to strive ahead once again.
Of course. Yangos, thank you so much for your insights and your time. Thank you for the opportunity to share your knowledge with us, and wishing you all the best.
My pleasure, Dimitris, and I hope the viewers enjoy this. And obviously, I'm also, at your disposal whenever you wish to have conversations, because what we're trying to do is shed some light on very difficult items and very difficult issues that we don't have the answers. We just have, having this discussion as a matter of highlighting some elements.
Great. All the best.